Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from Wise, Witty and Weird. Just another conversation with you about a topic which I'm interested in. I hope you'll be interested in it as well. It's just in relation to the United States and their degree of insanity. And before we start, I just want to remind everybody that if you like our videos and you think that they have some value and you'd just like to maintain your connection with us, then please subscribe and do your thing in order to ring the bell so you can be notified of any other videos that we make. And I'd also like to say that Avery Hilditch will be joining me in the new year to have further conversations with you all about things that are wise, witty, and very, very strange and peculiar. So the first thing I wanted to really talk about today is the fact that in the United States, I'm continually intrigued, as some of you might be aware from the previous Things That Matter post that you'll find on this same YouTube channel, and that is that there are some crazy things that are happening in the United States, and I think the craziest of them all is Donald Trump. And the reason why I'm particularly concerned at the moment is that, as I've said before, there's a movement towards the right, I think, worldwide, and there has been one in Europe for quite some time. And here in Australia, normally these trends tend to seep their way into our culture at some particular point. And I guess I'm concerned that what they're experiencing in the US will find its way here. You know, we have the likes of Cory Bernardi, we have the likes of Pauline Hanson, and not that I would ever expect any of those people to be influential within the mainstream political system, in that they don't belong to parties that have any particular power or influence. So I guess the most important thing to be aware of is that will this stuff flow over to us? And the United States insanity is something that I find quite interesting, because to think that within a rational society you can have a person that can take control of just not a political party, but a base of people who believe almost everything that this person says, I find extremely strange. Now, I know that there are people on the left of politics in the US who find him just as abhorrent and just as crazy as I do. So when I'm talking about the United States insanity, I'm not suggesting for a moment that anyone that comes from the United States is insane. What I am highlighting, I think, is the fact that there are so many people in the United States who believe what this man says. Now, I saw an interesting interview with Jake Tapper yesterday, which was talking about, so Jake was talking about why he chooses not to interview certain people. Now, Jake's a journalist. I've started reading his book, in fact, and I believe from that book they're making a mini-series. So well done, Jake, by and by. But what he did talk about was, what sort of people do you interview if you're a journalist? And he certainly was making the point that he wasn't going to interview people like McEnany because they just don't tell the truth. And so Kellyanne Conway, interestingly enough, he said it was worth interviewing because she would at least pivot or find ways to pivot the conversation to something that she wanted to talk about, which is a political strategy that I guess a lot of people tend to admire. But with regard to McEnany, he decided not to have her on at all. And it was interesting how this divide has occurred between the mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, all the other sort of other networks. They're not necessarily left-leaning networks, I don't think. But the interesting thing is that if you are criticising people like Donald Trump and the Republican Party for the way they have behaved, you automatically become left-wing. That somehow that you're not permitted to offer a critique or you can't, even more importantly, as Tapper was saying, you can't tell the truth according to the facts that are presented. And if the facts are suggesting, for example, that there was no fraud in the election in the US, then they are the facts. You can't do much about it. They are the facts that you have. As Conway once said, there are alternate facts. The alternate facts are the distortion of the truth or just plain out lies. So when we're analysing and looking at the facts, we can see for ourselves whether or not those factual details are relevant in terms of the discussion. But then how do you have a discussion with someone who blatantly ignores the facts? So it got to a point in the US where Trump kept on saying that the election, and is still saying, in fact, that the election was fraudulent, that all these votes came in at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then suddenly he went from winning to losing certain seats and certain states in the US. Now, we all know why that happened. The fact is that they counted all the votes that were cast that day, so the walk-in votes, and then they counted later on in the evening all the mail-in votes. It's just the way they did it. And when they started sort of finish one set of votes, then they started counting the others, and most of those went for Biden, hence the reason why there was this spike. It's logical to me. It is factual because lots of people have confirmed that. The guy that was actually running the election said that he believed it was one of the fairest elections that he's ever experienced. He got sacked, incidentally, for saying that. So I guess if the facts support the argument that, in this case, Biden won, then why is it that people need to support the alternate story to that if it is not factual? And we know that there have been 63 cases thrown out of court where they've tried to challenge this. We know that at the moment, when this goes to Congress on 6th of January, that they're looking at Congress, some people in the Republican Party objecting to the votes being declared, and that as a result of that, they're hoping that the election could be overturned. Now, that is a political coup, and it is crazy to think that anyone would support that. So why is it then that you have a group of people who will not look at the facts? Is it because the deep state, according to them, is so entrenched that they are able to subvert justice in whichever way they can, in a very authoritarian way? That means that they were able to change things, and that they were able to produce an election result that favoured Biden as opposed to Trump. And how is it that they were able to do that? Now, look, I'm the first person to admit that there are times I do wonder about government's influence and government power, and how things are often not presented to us in the way that it should be, because for whatever reason there is a lack of transparency. I understand all of that, but when the facts are so obvious, when there's so many people telling the same story, when there's nothing to support the other argument, why is it that people want to believe that? And the reason is, I think, is because there's a type of insanity. So it's like in my world, working with clients, if I have somebody who is psychotic, they're viewing and seeing things that are just not happening. We know that they're not because some of their stories are just outlandish. So somehow this is like a psychosis that has enveloped many people in the United States, to a point whereby no matter what the psychosis is, the psychosis will then become the reality. And I see that as extremely dangerous, because the people that believe this psychotic behaviour, these psychotic ideas, are the people that are probably most likely to be the most violent. I'm not suggesting for any moment that anybody who has a psychotic episode is necessarily violent, but their behaviour, because they're thinking in extremes, their behaviour therefore becomes extreme. And what it is that they do is unpredictable, totally unpredictable. Now, what's going to happen when you get a whole group of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people who have the same set of beliefs and who do believe that what it is that is their belief is factual, is the truth, and then they act upon that in order to have things changed? What happens? Well, we know that people will revolt. And when people start to revolt, and they're this particular group of people, such as the Proud Boys, who have a completely different agenda, racists in general, the Ku Klux Klan or whatever they might be at the moment, they have a different view and they have a different agenda. So for them, it isn't about necessarily the paranoid general belief. It is more about them being able to meet their bizarre and racist ideas. So we're going to find that these people are going to take what they can from this to get what it is that they want. And this is the US insanity. That this will happen, I predict, that it's going to happen in a way whereby there will be many people hurt and some people will die. We've already had some clashes in the US where this has happened. And at some point, somebody has to make a stand. Now, I actually believe that there's going to come a time when Donald Trump will become totally irrelevant. That all this stuff that carries on about him and this notion that he has around his power and influence and control of other people by being able to bully them, there will come a time when that will become less and less relevant. And he will eventually fade away into insignificance. But the fear is that there will be some people who will see what he's been able to do and will endeavour to enlist this base for them to be able to gain the power that they need. And Marco Rubio is one of those. And there's a whole group of other people within the Republican Party who will do the same. Now, not only will that be the case, so this is, how can I put it? So this is like a template. This is how we're going to run government in the US, and how we can perhaps run and manage our own source of power and influence in other parts of the world. So if we can develop a base that is that paranoid, that is not interested in facts, who are able to become angry and frustrated because the system does suck, right? And that we're able to influence them to a point whereby they can start to believe the stuff we want them to believe, then I think that that's dangerous. And I fear that there will be many people in Australia and elsewhere who will take note of all of that. The bizarre thing is that I find that there are people in Australia who I see as intelligent individuals. People like Alan Jones, for example, who is still declaring that he believes in these alternate facts. They're non-facts, but he believes in them still. You know, and sometimes it's because it doesn't matter about how intelligent you are or how unintelligent you are. If you want to believe in something strong enough because it fits your underlying values and principles, then, you know, you're going to force that issue to the nth degree, and you are never likely to change. You know, our values are our values. I believe our values are flexible and they change over time. But some people hold on to those values and principles so strongly that anything that conflicts with them is seen as dangerous. So any idea they have that sits on the right that is conflicting with values on the left, they will fight tooth and nail in order to get their way. And at the end of the day, that can be dangerous because that can cause people to lose their lives. You know, so we have many examples, I think, whereby the values and beliefs are so solid. You know, it's like the Christian and atheist debate. Those people that believe in Christianity are firm in their belief, and nothing is going to sway them. And atheists are the same. They sit on one side and they're going to argue like hell until... but out of those debates, often we don't get conflict or terrible conflict. But when we're having debates and discussions that are about our freedom, for example, and that our sense of freedom, for whatever reason, is being taken from us, it isn't. That is illusionary. It's like here in Australia we have an ongoing debate, I guess, about wearing masks and COVID, and we don't have all that much of a debate, I don't think, about whether it's a hoax or not. Even on Sky News, though, we occasionally see those sorts of arguments. But we have a debate about the degree to which governments can step in and tell us what it is that we can and can't do. Fortunately, in Australia, we are relatively compliant and agreeable, and we have celebrated the work that premiers and Prime Minister have done in this particular area, because we know that the decisions that they've made have been made by discussing the alternatives with scientists and others. So the decisions they've made have been basically well informed. And we know that those decisions that flow down to us are implemented for the right reasons. Not because someone wants to control anything necessarily, even though they'll say that Daniel Andrews was trying to control his megalomaniac, whatever they're saying. I don't believe that for a minute. And that we should be able to make decisions about how we want our life to unfold. But at the end of the day, if we know that the decisions they make are about keeping us safe, then we will tend to want to accept those decisions. But there has been a pushback, though, because people don't want to be told what it is that they should or should not do. Now, I think that we could find that over time, that base there could get larger and larger and more influential that's pushing back against lockdowns and the other things that we have to do. Fortunately, in Australia, there are a number of states that are pretty free. Western Australia, Tasmania, Northern Territory, ACT, I think, Queensland's pretty free. New South Wales has got a problem. And Victoria is now pretty good. So for most of us, we don't have to wear masks when we wander around town, and we don't have community spread of the virus. So we're okay, right? But we've learned that to get to that point, we've had to follow some rules we didn't like, rules that prevented me from playing golf for a few weeks, but they were rules, and we accepted them in the end because we know that that's what's going to keep us safe. And there's no way in the world, someone of my age in particular, who's 45, doesn't want to get the virus. So we do the right thing, right? And the debate from left to right vanishes when we all accept generally that this is the best thing for us to do. But when you get thousands and hundreds of thousands of people believing an alternative solution is appropriate against all the evidence, that in Sweden they did that experiment around herd immunity, and they discovered that they were wrong. As a result of that, this very small country had thousands of deaths that were unnecessary because they were simply wrong. And they made a political decision as opposed to a community health decision about what should be done around the virus. We know in this country that our health advice is as good as it gets, and we do have a health system that's certainly one of the best in the world. So we, as a society, for whatever reason, have also decided, well, the government actually have decided that they're not going to vaccinate us until March. And I guess one of the reasons for that is that we don't have an out-of-control coronavirus issue here in Australia. And we are able to manage it, and there's been, relatively speaking, very few deaths. So we're doing okay. But at the end of the day, the United States is confronted by a sense of insanity. And somebody needs to do something about it. And I'm hoping that Biden, the Democrats, and other more moderate people can step in and make a real difference. Now, I just want to suggest to people that if you're watching this on YouTube, if you would just subscribe to us and ring the bell for future notifications. And I also want to make this little ad as well. We've now got Wise, Witty and Weird on a Patreon page, and if you'd like to contribute to us, it would be most helpful in terms of producing these videos and doing the things that we do. We'd like to get your financial support if that's possible. So go join, put in a subscription for per month, and become a part of Wise, Witty and Weird, so that we can continue to have these conversations with you. And we're hoping that we'll be able to improve the type of conversations and have more and more people talking with us about the issues that matter to them over to 2021. So 2021 is looking to be a pretty exciting year for us, and I'm hoping that we can be with you during that period and that you can join us also on Patreon. So join with us, be a part of this, and join in the discussion too. We'll be most interested to hear what you have to say. So everybody, thanks very much for being with us. And if I don't speak to you in the meantime, I certainly hope that you have a good new year and that 2021 is certainly better than 2020. Take care.